Okay, good evening, everyone. So before we start with today's proceeding, I'll request everyone to please settle down and keep your cell phones on silent. Okay, so once again, good evening. This is Shivani Pandey, your host for the day, and it brings me immense joy to be here with you all today. So I extend a hearty and warm welcome to our esteemed panelists, our valued partners, and our distinguished guests joining us for this special occasion. Thank you so much for gracing us with your presence. Can we start our day with a huge round of applause? So once again, I'll request everyone to please settle down. So before we begin, let me tell you, I am very much delighted to share that Shri Bhupendrabhai Patel, our esteemed chief guest, will be joining us very soon. So as we all know, the Indian Express has always essayed a leadership role in raising pertinent issues across industry verticals. The publication takes great pride in playing the role of a facilitator and encouraging debate and discussion amongst its various stakeholders communities in order to drive meaningful change. The Indian Express Roundtable Conference, an initiative of the Indian Express, is a thought-provoking forum that brings together industry leaders as well as policymakers on a single focused platform. The objective being to encourage a substantive exchange of ideas on key issues confronting the industry and get the best minds to give it direction and, of course, solutions. Today's edition of Indian Express Roundtable Conference is on Gujarat startups, fueling innovation and economic growth. Gujarat startup where innovation meets opportunity. As a state renowned for its entrepreneurial spirit and forward-thinking policies, Gujarat has become a hotbed for groundbreaking startups that are reshaping industries and driving economic growth. Today we will explore how these startups, powered by a combination of creativity, resilience, and strong government support, are fueling innovation and contributing to the state's robust economic development. Join us as we uncover the stories, challenges, and successes that are shaping Gujarat's startup ecosystem. Today's edition of IeRTC, an initiative of the Indian Express, Gujarat startups fueling innovation and economic growth, is possible with the support of our valuable partners. So I would like to thank all our partners, our co-presenting partner, Index TV, our associate partner, iHub, Savli Technology and Business Incubator, iCreate, Swarnim University, Power University, GVFL, Charusat, and Anand Foundation. So before we begin, now I would like to call upon Ms. Leena Mishra, resident editor, the Indian Express, to give the opening address to all of you. Can we have a huge round of applause for her?
Good evening and welcome everyone. It's an honor to have you all here, and this month is very special to us because on the 5th of February we turned 57 in Gujarat, and this would not have been possible without the support of all of you, all our precious readers who have been our watchdogs, and we have been only happy listening to them and moving on. So I won't waste much time. Let us begin. We have really enthusiastic and young participants on our two panels, and I think we will start right away with the first panel, which will be talking about Gujarat's startup ecosystem and whether it is future ready. Thank you and welcome again.
Thank you so much, everyone. So as she said, we'll begin with the panel discussion and she'll be moderating the session. Can we have a huge round of applause for her once again? Now let me invite all the panelists. I would like to invite Mr. Siddharth Parikh, Head Programs and Initiatives, IeCreate. Yes, can we have a huge round of applause for him? And now please welcome Hiranmay Mahanta, Chief Executive Officer, Gujarat Startup and Innovation Hub. Yes, can we all have a huge round of applause for him? Now please welcome Devina Kothari, Director, Swan Design Labs. Yes, इनके लिए भी जोरदार तालियां हो जाए. And now I would like to invite Srijay Sheth, Director, Legal Viz. Once again, please welcome him with a huge round of applause. So now let's begin our panel discussion on the topic Gujarat startup ecosystem. Is it future ready? Over to you, Leena.
Thank you. I hope I'm audible. Yeah, so I thought the best person to start this panel discussion would be Mr. Hiranmay Mahanta, who is from iHub, the Gujarat Student Startup and Innovation Hub. So, Mr. Mahanta, tell us, since the last 4 years, Gujarat has been topping the rankings in the country. So, what are the kind of interventions and policies the state has done to make this happen?
Thank you. First of all, I congratulate Indian Express to bringing us together. I always say that an ecosystem is as good as how better they can perform together. And thanks for getting a bunch of startups and a lot of incubators here. One fact that I will try to tell here is government has a very specific role in developing startup ecosystem. And we realized very soon that the role cannot be the role of a driver. The role should be appropriately as an enabler. So the policies of Gujarat government has been kind of creating that enabling environment more rather than getting into the business of the startup directly. So one thing that Gujarat government did very early was, if I can summarize in 3 I's, first was to create institutions to drive the movement. So institutions like IeCreate, iHub, GVFL, GSBTM, all these institutions are institutionalized for a specific goal. So building institutions who will cater to a specific need of startups in the journey of mind to market was one thing that government did. The second I was about, once you build the institution, you also need to have incentive to these young founders, right? And Gujarat was one of those first 2-3 states who designed a comprehensive startup policy way back in 2015-16, apart from an industrial policy. So incentives are designed. What is it for incubator? What is it for startups? What is it for mentors? What is it for all enabling organizations? So the incentive was the second thing that was introduced alongside the institutional mechanism. And once you have institutional mechanism and incentives, you also find you need to have innovations around, right? Because that's the basics of creating enterprises. And one thing where Gujarat has really done well, apart from other states, is to continuously focus on strengthening the innovation pipeline. And therein the role of Department of Education, Department of Science and Technology and others come really handy. Because globally the best ecosystems are around best innovation clusters, may it be Silicon Valley around Stanford or the Israel ecosystem around Technion. So the innovation pipeline really matters how vibrant the ecosystem should be. So as I mentioned, building institution, creating incentives, and finally focusing on creating innovation. These three has played 3 I's, I say, as very important for building long-term ecosystem. But one thing was very clear for Gujarat case, if you go to any other states, pick up from India map, there is only one department and one secretary who drives this agenda. In Gujarat, 5 departments have startup policies, almost a dozen PSUs have startup units, and almost, because I represent education department, out of 109 universities, 70 of them have incubation centers. So I think the game of building startup ecosystem is decentralized, inclusive, and that itself has shown a path to others how to emulate forward.
I would like to move to Devina now. She is based in Rajkot, and she is the founder of the Zuan Design Labs, and she's also a TEDx speaker, and she has worked with the Google for startups. Yeah. So she will tell us more about how Gujarat compares vis-a-vis. Her work is mostly outside of Gujarat. So she will tell us how ecosystems outside of Gujarat have worked, and you know, the 3-4 areas where we could learn from them. Yes, Devina. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me here. It's wonderful, and interacting with Hiranmaya sir is great. Just to draw some insights from other cities, I think what Ahmedabad or Gujarat has, which works for it, is the great infrastructure. We have great connectivity vis-a-vis roads, metros, port is nearby. A lot of infrastructure that does not work for other cities or states is working for us. That's a great boon. Now that also paves way for us to have a startup corridor. Now that's one thing that countries like Singapore and Berlin, we could really learn from them, how they are leveraging these corridors to have organic interactions between investors, founders, workforce, institutions as well. Second, I feel that since Gift City is such a boon to us, why not have a global investment gateway? And with that, we learn from countries like Switzerland again and Singapore to have the best of fintech investors coming to Gift City, Gujarat, and actively participating in funding for our startups. Another thing that I feel that Bangalore does very well is having a very mentor-driven ecosystem for startups. Now, that's again something that Gujarat can learn from, that, hey, why not have something which is catered for Gen Zs? Because sometimes a lot of mentors are not Gen Zs, but they are mentoring founders who are Gen Zs. And there is going to be some level of difference in the way we communicate and our understanding. So more events that are catered for them would be great. Another fact that I would like to lay here is that 80% of the founders, early stage founders, often say that it's not the funding that's lacking for them or that's a bottleneck, it's the right mentorship. So if we can get the right mentors here, and it's possible because we have IIT, we have NID, we have IIMs, and we have amazing engineering universities here. So a university and industry collaboration, that can really foster well here. So not just from innovation and commercial gains, there is another very interesting bit, which is usability. So that's where design comes into picture, and that's again another layer that why it's more, I really feel that it will be great for Gujarat to have this kind of a collaboration, since we have all the institutes in one city.
So I think Mr. Siddharth Parikh can explain that now better on how Gujarat has, iCreate was a unique, he's from iCreate, and he had program and research. So I think he can explain to us best how iCreate started and how it has forged partnerships abroad and the partnerships that she's been talking about, the collaborations. If you could, talk about your experience within the organization.
Sure. Thank you so much for having us here. And like the stage is now set about what kind of initiatives were taken in the Gujarat's ecosystem and how it has evolved over a period of time and what could be possible. So I'd just like to share my experience of what I have been observing in the ecosystem since the last 5 years. iCreate was conceptualized way back in 2011 when these funding to the startups at early stages was not as prevalent as it is in these recent times. So a need was felt that a complete ecosystem, not just limited to funding, but also including the market, including the rapid prototyping facilities. So how an institution enable all of this, and it could have still an autonomous structure with a public-private partnership model. So that was the ground for establishment of IeCreate, and this was even before the Startup India movement started. And after 2016, so IeCreate has been operational since over a decade of operations. Then the Startup India movement came in. There was also the industrial policy of the government of Gujarat, SSIP, GSBTM. So over a time now, there is a complete fertile ground that has been set up. There are these initiatives where the government is subsidizing the startups for their participation in, there is funding opportunities that has been there. Now, the point is that the startups, what they value right now is not just the funding, but they value the opportunity to validate what they're building for the market. So what is that could be done for early market validation? That is what a startup at early stages would aspire for. In the course of time, IeCreate has also evolved as an organization, and from incubating early stage ventures to early stage startups, the focus was not only, IeCreate was not just created to cater to the regional ecosystem, but it was created and dedicated to the nation. So that either it is an innovation that is emerging from Gujarat and going abroad, or for that matter, any innovation that is coming from the European market that has been proven, a technology that has been proven in European market through, say, Israel. So how can we learn from those best practices? And to that effect, IeCreate has been working. There was a India-Israel innovation bridge that was launched by the Honorable Prime Minister of Israel and also our country in 2017. IeCreate did a program for bilateral cooperation with the innovators. And we also ran acceleration programs where identified the industry problems here in India and how could those be met with the solutions that are proven in, say, by the innovators in abroad. So how that handshake could be possible between our startups and the startups that have proven technologies, and that has been one of our forte. Then what I see over time is a game changer is the Global Capability Center policy that has been recently launched by our Honorable Chief Minister of Gujarat. If we see the trajectory of the emerging startup destinations within the country and also abroad, GCCs serve as a hotspot for attracting talent and skill sets, which could be used by these GCCs and also the startups that are operating within the ecosystem. GCCs thrive and they look for talent that creates innovation. They are basically the centers for encouraging R&D and innovation. So if there could be some kind of mandate that can come where the percentage of these GCCs budget could be provided to the startups, say 5% of the R&D budget that a GCC has to spend could be provided to the startups, then I think there will be a more symbiotic relationship, and there could be a guidebook that could be created where all the incubators, based on their strengths and their sectoral expertise, could be mapped, and it could serve as a guide to the global capability centers for easy reference that whom they should go to once they make up their mind to set up a GCC in Gujarat. Which incubators do they go to? What kind of talent they can expect? So that is something which can fall in lines like what Madam was mentioning about the startup corridors also. IeCreate has also been a secretariat under the G20 presidency of India. So we worked collaboratively with all the stakeholders for developing a communique, and that was also appreciated in the Australia's edition as the best communique that has come up. So how can these startup corridors created not only within India but also can we lean on to the other countries where the exchange of innovation can happen? That is where we are trying to focus right now. So I think I'll stop at this.
Yeah, just briefly, could you give us an example of the learnings, once these collaborations happen, the innovations go abroad. If you can just cite some experience that you have had of a particular startup that started from with
Right.
the iCreate handholding and has gone abroad.
Right, right. So interestingly, when I joined iCreate, I was more seeing the startups and that were catering to the regional needs or at best the national needs. Over a period of time, we invested a good amount of effort in supporting EV subsystems, startups on EV subsystems. And interestingly, one of the startups that we identified in the second edition of that EV campaign, they were making this VCU for the OEMs that could bring down their wiring harnesses usage by 70% and ultimately contributing to the zero emission trucking. So this startup, when we spoke to them first time that, hey, are you able to get business orders here in India? So this startup founder who had quit his job in the US and then come back and set up this startup here in India. So he's making technology in India and providing it to the world. Incidentally, when we did a survey, we recently were awarded the Impact Incubator at one of the summits in Bangalore. So we did a survey of these startups that, where are you, where do they stand? What interesting insight came across was that the first customer that this startup found is based in US. Now it is very easy for a software startup to provide their services in the US, but a product startup finding their first customer outside India and this technology again percolating to the US. So that's, I think, an achievement of which we can say with a reasonable sense of confidence. So that is the impact that this could create. Indigenization of technologies, and making products in India for the world. That is where we are, trying to make an effort. Yeah.
Great, thank you. So now we'll go to Srijay. Srijay Sheth has a startup called Legal Wiz, and he does very interesting things. From the basic conversation I had with him, I found, he deals with the most messiest part of the startup, which is legal compliance. Okay. So first of all, I would like to, we should hear from him how he helps startups adapt to the lifestyle of a startup. Is that, that would be more.
Yeah, I think, legal and compliance, I think is a very dry subject. We try to put a little fun to it. So we are an online startup. We primarily work through an online portal, and we provide legal compliances, IP related services to thousands of startups across India and some abroad. But I think, in terms of being compliant, it is a necessity for all businesses. One thing that I would definitely like to raise is, with everyone said that there is so much of encouragement that is coming from incubators, from accelerators. The government push is tremendous. There's a lot of funding opportunities which have never been before. One side of the coin is fully covered. I think the other side of the coin, which not a lot of people talk about, which is why not to start up, right? And one of the primary reasons why I would highlight that is the compliances, right? We are in a business of starting people's companies, right? And we register thousands of companies every year. And the problem that we have identified is not even 60% of those come back to us and do the first year's compliance. And that is a tragic story. Right now, there is a lot of government incentivization. There is a lot of scope to improve that. Having said that, starting up has become a fashion statement, right? We all know, like my elderly generation went to cinemas to have fun, and that was a cool quotient for them. For my kind of generation, going to a pool parlor or a bowling alley was a cool quotient. Owning a startup, becoming a startup founder has become a cool quotient today. And so not everybody can commit to the startup entrepreneur's lifestyle, but they do because of the peer pressure. And I think that that understanding is very important. So when we say that the compliance play a huge role in shaping a business, right? There are 4 different categories that are broadly put in. One is you started right, right, and that is where most of the people default is when they come to the business advisors of our companies and they say, "Mereko company khulani hai," right? They don't know the company can be a company, LLP, proprietorship, partnership, Section 8 company, trust. It could be different form and formats, right? So as basic as that, to how to start it right, how to protect it right? Your right set of IPs in place. You register your trademark to start with to protect your brand, and then if you have an innovation which is a primary formula for a startup, whether that is patentability that prevails, you have right set of contracts. A lot of startups default on the contracts, or they can't bind their second party into a contractual agreement because there is lack of knowledge around that, right? So protecting the business is very important. The third thing is definitely complying, right? Which has to do with the right set of registrations, right? People start business out of passion, and passion is like art, right? It does not have any boundaries, and you don't like to be confined. You don't like to think that there are so many compliances that I have to waste my time on, and it is categorically I'm saying it waste of time, because that is not the most productive use of a founder's time, but it needs to be, because being non-compliant gets you so much of repercussions that you can't even kind of get out of it. One good example is a lot of startups come to us and they're in the process of raising funds, and the due diligences happen, their compliances are haywire, their accounting is not in place, right? So all of these things don't really matter in the first year, but if you grow and as you grow, it just starts becoming so important that it'll push you back in the game by 5 years, right? So I think that is why that is very important. And the fourth very major thing about why you should have right set of financial control is the monitoring aspect of it, right? Believe it or not, most of the startups shut down because it's not because lack of passion, it is rather lack of funds, right? They don't know what is their burn rate, what is their unit economics, how longer they can sustain, right? They see that my number of users are growing, and get to a point where to sustain those number of users, you need so much of funding, but nobody is willing to fund. Right, and that is where you have a burning moment. That is where you have a melting moment. And so even companies who scale very tremendously in terms of users and tractions, they sometimes shut down, and they shut down because eventually they run out of money. I think the one hyper-local company, Zepto, if I'm not wrong, very recently shut down because of that, and valued at billions of dollars of valuation once upon a time, right? So I think that is why it is very important to also educate our kids, to sort of let them know that it is great to be an entrepreneur, but it is not the only way to make ends work, right? There are other revenue opportunities. If you are not cut out to commit to an entrepreneurial life, then I think there are other ways, and it is perfectly okay to explore. I guess that's my take.
I have an IeCreate. Do you give tutorials on what he just said to people who come for, setting up a startup with an idea?
So we definitely don't give tutorials, but we provide them mentorship.
Okay.
So what difference it makes is that it's more a high touch, in person, and very tailored advice that is given to the startups. Mm-hmm. So a startup that is stuck in, say, a legal hassle. So to the extent that is possible, from the experience of our mentors that are in-house, we provide them that advice. And beyond the scope that we can guide them, we have a panel of experts through which we lean on to their support, and then have them provide their advice to the startups. So that's how we've been doing it.
Okay. So I would like to move on to the next issue here, which is basically making Gujarat future ready. So there's one issue in Gujarat we see is, it's not an issue, it's an enabler as of now, that the government has heavily invested in the startup ecosystem. So what are the, things we need to be warned about with so much of government participation? Mr. Hiranbhai Mahanta, if you would like to talk about this.
So
what are the, yeah.
I think it's a very valid point that government is only the one quadrant of the ecosystem facilitator, right?
one very important thing that all of us need to recognize, that the first wave of Silicon Valley was kind of government push, the initial stage of DARPA and NSF funding and everything else. That is what is happening in India and states now. But the second decade of Silicon Valley was all about private sector participation, right? So the initial entrepreneurs who made money, they made sure that the money that they made during the process of technology wealth creation, they reinvested that money in intellectuals and inspiring founders. So one thing that I think, government has done a fair bit of work, but what is one area that probably we need to ponder and figure out is, how can we see more industry participation in next decade to come? Because I was reading a note, it said that the 8 people who made PayPal, they famously called PayPal mafias, in next 20 years, they have either invested or inspired or influenced 20,000 technology startups in US, right? So I was looking at such phenomenon in India, and I came across that the Infosys mafia or Infosys founders in next 20 years beyond their role of CXOs has triggered around 2,000 companies where they have invested or kind of helped them grow in some strategic interest. Now, this kind of phenomenon need to also happen here, right? The entrepreneurs who have made wealth, money here also need to trigger the next curve of wealth making through startups. I think that is one area that we need to really work around. The second thing is, एक बड़ा interesting चीज है, जब प्रधानमंत्री जी स्टार्टअप इंडिया लॉन्च किए थे ना, lot of these people policies have looked at the first factor of startup India, but he also was very particular about stand up India. Stand up India means when these companies start working, becoming profitable, whether they will remain a small profitable SME and they will be highly scalable, ultra valuable global companies, वो differentiation की वो बात कर रहे थे. तो कहीं ना कहीं lot of interventions have goes into the starting of part, but you also need to figure out how do you do the scaling of part, because otherwise what will happen, you will have a very suboptimal value capture kind of ecosystem happening, right? So how do we also figure out that, once, Gujarat might have around 500 startups who are doing $1 million of revenue EBITDA, but whether they will remain at $1 million profit EBITDA or $100 million in next 10 years, that strategic intervention ecosystem is something that also need to work on. Otherwise what will happen, we will always create wonderful founders, but they will migrate out. And we need to solve that problem also. And the third important thing which is important, which CJ also mentioned is, can we figure out as a societal perception to decouple the failure of ideas versus failure of founders? Because globally, the best company founders are those who have made their 3rd and 4th attempts. There are few lucky ones who made first attempt unicorns, even in Gujarat, right? But globally, it's the 3rd and 4th attempts. That means कोई अगर तीसरी चौथी अटेम्प्ट में अच्छा कर रहा है तो किसी ने तो उसका पहला सेकंड अटेम्प्ट सब्सिडाइज किया होगा सोसाइटी में, गवर्नमेंट हो, प्राइवेट सेक्टर हो, कोई भी हो. नाउ हाउ डू वी मेक दैट अप्रोच कि हम फाउंडर बना रहे हैं ना ही कंपनी बना रहे हैं. आई थिंक इफ एन इकोसिस्टम मेक्स ग्रेट फाउंडर्स, tomorrow or day after tomorrow they will hit the nail. But if we say कि no, the founder's responsibility is to build the first company, the hit company, probably he will fall under the pressure of building it right on at the right attempt, right? So we need to figure out that how do we decouple between failing an idea and failing of a person, because once you decouple that, this concept of creating wonderful founders versus creating of wonderful companies will decouple itself. And I think this is one great lesson which we can learn from other ecosystems. And finally, we are a large of domestic consumption economy. If you can figure out some way, both private sector and public sector, that a decent amount of your domestic consumption go into startups, not saying that government will only buy it, even in private sectors. We are hugely a consumption economy. I think if you can incentivize that, we can do faster experiments of new product and solution in our vicinity. Today, before the event, I met 3 startups. All of them are trying to figure out who will be my first 10 B2B customers or who will be my first 1,000 B2C customers. Now, once you do that faster and let them fail, learn, I think that itself will inspire them to go to the last mile. I think these 3-4 things I believe we should take care.
Interesting. Mr. Parikh, would you like to add?
I think Hiranmay sir had summed it up really, really well. In a journey of a startup, it's ultimately the founders that are in the company, and they become the determinant of the fate of the startup that they have started. So the best thing that as a ecosystem enablers we could do is help them pivot and find success, not just with one idea, but which idea would have that potential to be successful with a viable business, that is what we could do. But I think sir summed it up in so many good words. So
let us talk to the two founders. Would you like to tell us about your, you can take the, yes, you may.
I think, both of them have summed it up so well, so there's nothing much that I would want to add to it except for one point on discipline. Because being a founder is more about the mindset rather than, what you're going to make or, because all of that's going to pivot at some point because the users are changing every 2.5 to 5 years. So today what is relevant as a product or a service may or may not be relevant in 5 or 10 years. So you'll have to always pivot. And to pivot, you need the right mindset to give that direction. So that mindset and that discipline is very important. And that would also probably dovetail into one of the points that he mentioned about, people are super enthusiastic when it comes to starting a particular venture as a startup because it's cool to have. But then when it comes to the discipline of establishing it, growing it, that's where the dropout happens.
And less and less women launching startups. Where do you see is the issue? Is it a gender issue or is there generally,
I think it's a mixed bag.
Okay.
You rightly said, a lot of, there are gender issues. Numbers say that women-led startups do not get as much funding as the male gender would get. But having said that, there are a lot of these conversations around starting a particular fund which backs women-led startups. But my only 2 cents there is that, do we really need it?
Do we really need women-led startups?
No, do we really need funds that will fund only women-led startups?
Okay.
Because to answer this, I would, with your permission, I would want to open this question for the house.
Yes, please.
What's the opposite of patriarchy? If anyone can tell me. What's the opposite of patriarchy? Matriarchy, right? And I thought that as well. Till I met 2 life coaches, Shabri Madappa and Neha Das, who opened up my mind. And they said, the opposite of patriarchy is not matriarchy, it is equality. Because if we are against one archy, to battle that, establishing another archy is just doing the same thing, right? So if we want more funding for women-led startups, instead of having another fund which is doing exactly the same but for another gender, let's have more conversations of giving them the right platform to network, giving them the right mentorship, so that they are also able to extract the same amount of funding from the same VC circuits. At the same time, facts also say that BCG came up with a report in 2021 which said that mixed gender founders were able to have more revenue generation versus single gender.
Oh, that's interesting.
But that was 2021, and 2023, only 2.3% of the global funding went to women-backed startups.
Yeah.
So this is where the disparity is. So if it was regarding skill set or abilities, I think BCG report proved it, much ahead. So it's not just about that, it's the mindset. And when it comes to mindset, I think it's more important to address that with the right conversations rather than having some or the other activity around it which will divide the issue rather than bridging it.
Okay. Would any of the men want to talk about this?
So you are asking whether there should be women-led fund or what was the question? Sorry.
Why are women-led startups, they're lesser over the years, and the funding is also lesser?
No, if I quote the Startup India statistics, I think they say that 40% of the directors of all the companies listed in Startup India portals are one woman. So in terms of numbers are not very contradictory. But I think, honestly speaking, today nobody is looking at what geography you come from, what background you have. Everybody is looking at the merit of the idea and the founder who can execute it. So I don't think so any fund has a primary thesis saying that okay, I'm a male focused or female focused. But of course, to make sure that there is an inclusion aspects into it, ultimately people who make funds are there to make money. They're not there for any ideology, okay? And every fund has an hypothesis. In 8 years, they have to make money and multiply and give it back to their investors. But I talk to few venture funds like C Capital and other. In fact, if you become sector specific or gender specific, it is tough to manage a fund because then your ability to navigate is lesser. So if people are taking that step, it is fine. Of course, there are, see, honestly speaking, 6-7 years is too less a time to judge or give a statement saying that these sectors are neglected or these sector is neglected. I think complete ecosystem comes at a runway of 3 decades. And we are just hardly 10 years into in Startup India story. I think there are a lot of silent things happening which are not very audible, which are not very measured. But it doesn't mean that unmeasured things are not happening. A lot of things are happening. I mean, for example, if I say out of 113 unicorns about whom we really celebrate, none of them went to any incubator in this country. So if the pedagogy of incubation was the only way to succeed, then how come these majestic founders happened, right? So there is no sort theory saying that it's not like a school, higher education and PhD. There are a lot of maneuvering around it. So I think give us 5-6 years in the ecosystem in this country, I think a lot of things will happen. And I think that will be the right time to judge actually what is happening around.
Yes.
A little optimistic.
That's good. Yes, please.
Thank you. So I think it's also the biological clock. So a lot of times when we are out of college or when we are in our first jobs is when we'll get the cool idea that you'd want to start up with. And by the time it matures that we would want funding and all, we might get the first funding and then it's also the clock. So a lot of times there is a choice, which ideally should not be a choice. But there is a choice whether you would want to look after the family or would you want to look after the venture. Okay. And which is a tough call to make. A lot of people are juggling around it, but the way our mindsets are, the way the ecosystem is, I mean not the startup ecosystem, but the societal ecosystem. It just is too much of pressure on the women to adhere to a certain norms and all, which also takes a toll on the other baby, which is the startup.
Okay.
I'm just tempting to get one remark. I mean, I think the narrative of funding is the indicator of success is, I think, also a page 3 syndrome. I'm not blaming anybody else, but I think this is only one indicator. I mean, if you see all the startups supported by Department of Industry, Department of Technology, Education, we recently did an analysis and we figured out these women-led founders are more sustainable. They are doing more profitable enterprises. So we should not only figure out that we can jobs, or whether we'll be happy creating 1,000 companies, doing deep tech, biotech, solving MSME problem, and making decently profitable enterprises. I think it's all about where do we really land as a nation and where do we really evaluate as a startup ecosystem as a state. And I think if you ask me, Gujarat startups are probably unique ones who are really profit-driven, value-driven, inclusive, science and tech is embedded, not those kind of companies who valued $1 billion without a revenue at the desk. So I think our economics is at the fundamental level right.
Okay, so we should look at the value addition and not just the numbers, right? We have Mona ma'am anyways going to tell us about this. Yes, we can open the house if anyone has any questions to this panel. Yes? No questions? Okay, yeah. We'll wait for 5 more minutes.
It's not a question what the last discussion was happening. I'm Professor S.P. Singh, Director General Kaushalya Skill University. Was basically asking that you may be having some mechanism not known to me, just elaborate further, that based upon jobs created by a company, startup, profit margins versus investment, and there may be some mechanism like we have in our education system, NIRF ranking, NAC ranking, accreditations. There may be some mechanism where you can find out which company is more inclusive than making money alone. So just inquisitiveness from the last discussion, I draw and ask this, maybe if you can answer.
So if you look at all our government scheme, Department of Science and Technology, Industry, Education, I think we give this money in a very early stage. So at that time, profit has never been indicated. I think what we are looking at, whether these boys and girls are solving a good problem of the society industry, that has been a key driver. Second, the problem. I think these two are important. And third factor is some degree of innovation. So kind of, it's kind of trade-off between trading and technology. Those both T's are different, right? So how do you differentiate between some factor of technology aspects into it? And in case you are solving something which is not technology, can you have some innovation in the business process side, some factor of innovation? So founders' ability to execute, solving a right problem, and decent bit of innovation. I think these are 3-4 things very subjective that we look into.
Probably I could not put my question properly. I'm sorry for that. My question is not that. My question is there any mechanism through which inclusivity of the nation, India as a startup nation, can have some demarcation that we want so many jobs to be created through innovations and startups, so much money should be gone in form of unicorns, so much of, social problems be resolved, and weightage may be given to each and every sector, and based on that we decide this unicorn is more inclusive unicorn, this startup is a more inclusive startup than only counting on the basis of money. That was the thing which triggered me to ask this question. You raised the point, right?
I think it's happening, and when IeRTC was the nodal center for the Startup 20 thing in G20 presidency, they also created a template for that for all G20. There are not very clear empirical yardsticks for that, but yes, I think if I speak about, sir is here, Department of Industry has a scheme where if you have a women founder, you get additional funding. If you are a science and tech company, DST is giving that, so including of science aspect into it. So there are schemes and incentive for sure, but the goalposts are not very clearly measured, what quantity and all. I think that thing will also evolve in the process.
Yes. Can someone please?
Thank you, Indian Express, for organizing this event. I, Jayesh Patel, inventor and founder of Telepathy. I am making MVP of Tele Glass that works with technology from human thinking. Right now, I am experiencing the challenges like cyber security. That thing like making the hindrance in my startup progress. Like if I want to get a fund or would like to make supply chain to build like production plant at Ahmedabad, but sometimes I am not receiving the reply from the like supply parts company or not getting proper application form on the like supported startup incubation center. So how the like incubation center support for cybersecurity for entrepreneurs?
So is your question with respect to strategic sourcing, that you are not able to access the supply chain in your capacity and you are looking for any support that an incubation provide? Is that your question?
Yes, because I already did cyber complaint to the National Cyber Portal, but they are not having like adequate support to solve the problem.
Understood. So are you incubated with any of the incubators or?
At the moment with the Swarnim University.
Okay, okay. So I think if you can leverage the incubators network to reach out to say offices of Ministry of Electronics and IT, which has bodies like CERTIN to look into such instances, a mail from their side would help. That is one part. That is only, I mean, a feasible option that comes on priority to my mind. I can also check with my fellow panelists if they have something to advise. So I would have done that. I mean,
Yes, maybe. Yeah.
I would probably do the same. I mean, leverage the network that you can. If you are, and again, not to kind of put a name or tag to anyone, but if you are not getting a good response from your current incubation center, and if you genuinely think that you are up to something big, then explore avenues, right? I mean, everybody has choices, and I've been a startup entrepreneur myself. I know the value of incubation. I know the value of networking. So more the merrier, right? I mean, we are not married to anyone. right? Explore your opportunities. The fantastic incubation centers around here. Talk to them. If it is not getting resolved, then it is best to give it a second shot. So there are also other incubation centers who might be able to help. And I'm sure they have a network in between as well. So you probably don't have to go through a formal process or anything. But yeah, that would be my second shot to it.
Any more questions? Yes. I'm Dr. Kranti Vora. I'm co-founder of QRL Bioscience, and this is responding to you, Devina. I'm being coached by Shabri and Neha currently under Women Lift Health. So I do understand where you are coming from, but I wish we could become gender agnostic society, but there are equity issues, gender equity issues. So I think till we get to that level, we need extra funding, we need special funding, we need special support for women entrepreneurs. I hope in my lifetime it's not going to happen, but my daughter's lifetime it will happen that we'll have a gender agnostic society. But till then, I think we need that extra support to get to that level. Thank you. Thank you.
I have two small points out there, one for Devina ji. We are talking about, again, about equity. I am part of Department of Science and Technology, take care of technology-driven startups, and my question is pertaining to deep tech startups. We get to see not many investors shying off from deep tech, especially when it comes to biotech or so on, where you have more of field trials, clinical trials, and so on. So it's a longer journey than rest and so on. So one is that, and lage haathon Leena ji, aapko main dusra ye pooch leta hu. How can I be of help, helping such deep tech startups on a longer run? We are a vibrant ecosystem, and possibly together we can do more synergistically.
Yeah, sure, let them answer first. We can do this offline. No.
I'm a little lost, like how do I answer this question? But if you could just break it down into one question, it would help me.
You did mention about ecosystems, maybe Singapore, international ecosystems where you have investors getting or mentoring startups or so on. We have a house of IIMs and IITs and IIT RAMs and also the Kaushalya University and so on. Or GBU for that matter, our Department of Science and Technology University. I think it is time that we look at deep tech startups in a bigger way and also line up investors in some form. You have been working with international investors as well, especially the design scenario. So if you have any takeaways for this matter, this is what I wanted to ask you.
Okay, got it. So I guess, yes, the academia helps a lot, but there are theories. And in the industry, we need to have validation. So I think that matchmaking is important, and you rightly said, we will require the right kind of mentors. Now, sometimes these mentors are within the universities, sometimes they are in the industry, depending upon what skill set is required. So how do we bridge the gap? I think more conversations, more interactions, more events, and then, starting with these events, but then it digresses into more informal conversations. Because when a lot of times founders are coming up with their problems, they are very conscious about how do they ask, who do they ask. So if we can normalize that and then have these informal conversations, I think a lot of those problems can be addressed. But another thing I feel which is important is that whenever there are these deep tech startups, as he rightly said, validation is going to be very important. So through academic institutions and through probably international collaborations, if we could do something like a relay, right? Like if all of us are going to run 100 meters, we'll only cover 100 meters. But if it's a relay, then we cover 600 meters. So I think if we could do that relay, that would be great. Do I answer your question?
Sir, if I can add to what ma'am has said, one very important constituent is also industry associations, as I see. Like startups would need mentors, they would also need critiques with constructive criticism. That's the best that industry association, and I was today having a conversation with one of the infrastructure companies that is coming up with a sustainability focused event. And they are creating these clusters where they would be conducting workshops on ESG and sustainability to first orient these industries and MSMEs about what it takes for them to be ESG or sustainability ready. I think having these industry associations evaluate the products of these startups and provide very frank advice, as against a mentor would do. They would try to always, have a very good rapport with the startup. But somebody wearing a black hat and then calling a spade, giving them very honest feedback, I think they have a very big role to play. Yeah.
That helps a lot. Yeah.
I'll also just add to that for deep tech and futuristic technology startups. So think of that as investing in equity, right? Probably all of us invest in equity, but not all of us are comfortable with mid cap or small cap stocks, right? Some of us are comfortable with small cap, but they are not comfortable with penny stocks. It works the same way in startups. So when people say that I want to become a startup investor, there are categories, right? So there are angel investors, there are institutional investors or private equities and venture funds and the whole hierarchy of it. Not everybody has an appetite to invest in a futuristic technology. And that is what something that needs to be. So many a times people say that we are working in a cutting edge technology, futuristic technology, but not many people are interested in investing in us, right? Is because most of the times we see that they have been approaching wrong set of people who practically do not have appetite for that, right? And so that is also one thing that needs to be segregated at some levels, wherein the person you are approaching for, especially as a seed investor, do they have an appetite to invest in something as risky? Startups anyways is a riskier asset class. When you are talking about futuristic technologies, that is like really go big, go home sort of a strategy that you are playing, right? So whether every investor has that appetite to play something like that, or people would rather be comfortable working with a D2C startup where you can build a fairly decent business if you don't really go very big, right? So I think that is one small point that I would like to add is approaching right set of funds who are specially carved out for that, who would look at the alpha in the portfolio and not the beta of the portfolio where the returns are proportionate to how the economy is doing. So I think that's where the gap probably might be.
I'll just take 1 minute to this. So the problem again is a knowledge economics problem. So if you look, if 100 rupees of grants have gone to startups, less than 30 rupees has gone into deep tech in grants as a country, right? So one thing is, because in the grant capital stage, no private investors will come because there is no value for money there. So that is one policy gap that we see. Second important thing is, ultimately the venture capitalist has an 8-year runway. 2 years to make the fund, 1 year to deploy the investment, 4 years to make money, and in last 2 years to consolidate. In deep tech, this first 3 years become 5 years. So technically the peak period of making money, they lose 2 bad years. So the math equation of venture capital industry in the regulation spectrum doesn't fit into deep tech. So the pehla problem to ye solve karna padega ki if you're creating an ecosystem in that space, it's also a regulatory challenge. How do you solve? How do you give that additional 2-year runway to the venture funds, right? So I think that's what SEBI is also looking into now, that can you have an alternative mechanism in which long-term funds can also exist alongside the mid-term funds. And second, I think Department of Science and Technology is solving the problem of deep tech grant aspects. So, but yes, this is a problem. I mean, most of these deep tech companies come to us, ask us 1 crore rupees in the grant level itself because it's a knowledge synthesis stage. And I'm sure with collective efforts of different departments of government, it can be solved.
Thank you very much. Oh, there is one question, maybe the last, yeah.
My name is Dr. Vishal, and my question to Sir Mahanta. Sir, do we have any particular fundamental development program for these startups who can reach from early stage to mature stage? So I came across so many startups. They are facing a lot of problem. They are always depend upon the mentorship, but actually they do not have the proper way to find out the way to reach to that milestone.
So mentorship is generally point of need care. आपको specific problem solve करना है, specific mentor can solve that. That's there. But at IeR we do a very flagship intervention in which we take every founder through a 3-month journey of understanding basics of strategy, finance, and how it exits. See, startups are all about you enter at one point on passion, but systematically you exit at some point of time. And one problem that we still try to solve is most of our founders are tech founders. They hardly have a formal understanding about finance and strategy. So हम तो 3 महीना compulsorily उन founders को groom करते हैं through stakeholders so that they understand the strategy. There is a gut feeling that how they can build a company, that's there. Inspiration is there, but they must need to go through the basic strategy, whether they should own the IP in the name of company, whether they should own the IP in the name of founders. These are very tactical things, which are also very strategic in long-term value creation. ये सब चीज हम 3 महीने की basic processes में हम उनको ensure करते हैं कि वो इतना basic speeding तो उसको हो जाए.
I think, sir, that is the requirement every time when we are talking about the failure of the startups. And the one of the reason which always come out, that is the fundraising. But that is not the only the one aspects. The second one, what I observe that they are not getting the proper development, because they are facing the issues and they come in the issue of the firefighting. So if we can work on that, I think they can definitely work very well.
Point noted. We'll do together.
Thank you very much. I think we should close the panel. Thank you very much, everyone. It was great. Yeah. Thank you.
So once again, thank you so much, everyone, for such an insightful session. Can we have a huge round of applause once again for them? Now, moving on, may I now invite Ms. Monaki Khandar, Principal Secretary, Department of Science and Technology, for the keynote address. And once again, can we welcome her with a huge round of applause?
So good evening, and at the outset, I would like to congratulate Indian Express for organizing this very, very relevant event. All of you must have seen the budget, and you must have seen the kind of focus or stress that Government of India has laid on startup, deep tech startup as well. And there are now 2 types of fund of funds. One is a general fund of fund that has been announced. The other one is deep tech fund as well. So, yeah. So just let me begin with telling you like how DPIIT defines a startup. So it's from age criteria, it should not be more than 10 years old. Entity type, LLP, partnership, this kind of legal framework. Annual turnover not exceeding 100 crore, and innovative and scalability. So these are some of the criteria through which DPIIT defines startup. Now, entire world has realized the importance of startup. We have seen Israel, though it doesn't come under the first 3 startup ecosystem, but Israel is well known for its startup. In addition to their problem-solving approach, they are disruptive. They are disruptive in nature because they offer that kind of solution which will disrupt the existing framework, and their solution would be such that it will actually resolve the socio-economic problem on hand. But if we dig deeper, startup actually does a lot of things. It centers around the innovation that is boiling in the community. It is actually a link between a normal kind of normal technology that we are using and research and development. It lies somewhere in between. And it's very much focused to resolving some problem. So actually it takes us or the socio-economic strategy to one level up on the technology ladder. Next, if we see the life cycle of startup, it begins with ideation, and then they work on it, they have proof of concept, and thereafter, they seek funding, then there is a commercial rollout, and in the process also they are supported by incubator, accelerator, VC fund, angel fund. So this is what generally we see what happens in the life journey of a startup. Let me briefly also mention that how Government of India and Government of Gujarat has been supporting startup. So there has been a supporting mechanism for ideation phase where we contribute to seed funding, then validation phase. Government does a lot of things. We have sandbox system. You all must be aware about GIFT, where FinTech Hub is taking place, and they have provided sandbox. RBI has provided sandbox, and that's how, if we look at the total number of unicorn, about 30% are from FinTech in India. Then even there are tax incentive, though let me also mention that there was this angel tax issue, but that has also been resolved. So there are tax concessions, and government also support the talent that is in the startup. And also during growth phase and maturity phase, there are a number of initiatives that Government of India has taken and Government of Gujarat has taken to support them through boot camp, through connecting them with the industry for mentoring, and also connecting them with the accelerator, connecting them to investors. So all this, and government also has its own fund, as Government of Gujarat also has, to reduce the risk that VC or any other fund might be hesitant to take. So if we see the journey of support, but it's one thing very important to note, that the way startup ecosystem has evolved in India, it was actually without any conscious support first. But when government saw that it is coming up so well, then a series of steps and initiatives were taken by Government of India to ensure that startup ecosystem gets the required support from the government. So to begin with, in 2016, Startup India initiative was announced. Then Fund of Fund for Startup was set up. It was a 10,000 crore fund, and SIDBI used to manage that. Then there is this Atal Innovation Mission to catch the innovators young. And we have a series of Atal Tinkering Lab initiated by Niti Aayog. Then we had we saw the incentives coming in the form of income tax exemption, and also the same was extended in recent budget as well. Then recognition of framework, it was being discussed that how do we evaluate the startups. So DPIIT recognition came with certain criteria. Then there is also a National Startup Advisory Council got set up in 2020. And Startup India Seed Fund Scheme was announced. Then Credit Guarantee Scheme for Startup was announced. And then in this budget, Fund of Fund for Startup, both for Deep Tech and General Startup announced. Now let us briefly see what are the success factors for the startup. We all are quite aware that it involves a lot of risk. The success ratio of startup is actually very low. But however, going forward, we can try to make it as efficient as possible. And the most important thing for the startup is to remain focused. Of course, solutions can fail, and it is also important to fail to reach at a higher level. So failing while offering solution is not a problem. It should not be considered as a failure at all. However, it's very important that we do not accelerate this process of failure. Rather, we should try to ameliorate the rate of failure in startup. So for that, startup needs to remain focused. Another very important thing is rather than working in silo, it is very important that we set up entire ecosystem. They need industry connect. They need a connect with research and development. And industry also needs to move a ladder up, improve their technological prowess by engaging startup. And that is what actually these global capability centers are doing. You know, the multinationals, our even domestic companies, they are setting up global capability center, and very recently we announced a policy. So normally they engage a lot of startups to provide that kind of solution. So this is the kind of ecosystem that we require, which will make startups more and more efficient. It will also make their strategic partners or all the stakeholders more and more efficient. We need to be connected. The academia, the government policies, industry, startup, R&D institutions, all need to be connected. So, and if we look at some of the successful startup, even Apple was a startup once upon a time. NVIDIA was also a startup. Adani was a startup. They provided, they began with Jetty and we know where they reached. Even Reliance was a startup. So success of startup, we are in Gujarat, so it's very relevant to look at investment solution that was provided by Zerodha, especially for retail investors. So these are the kind of, success, the possibility for success of a startup. It had that scalability. It could offer that solution to the masses. So that is very important, and remaining focused is very, very important. Now, similarly, we can take a look at failure factors for startup. And again, you can read the slide. There can be number of reasons why a startup would fail. But as I mentioned, we can make our ecosystem, our framework, our support system more and more efficient, such that we improve the success rate of a startup. Now, here also we can just dig into some of the example. You can see ZepPay here, but one is even Baiju. It might be a little controversial, but they didn't remain focused. You know, they went into so many things. They went more into marketing rather than enhancing their solution. So, from startups' point of view, it's very important that they keep improving their solution. They make it more and more robust. They make it more and more dynamic. That is for the startups part. And for all others, it's very important that they get rolled out properly once they offer efficient solution. Now, if we come to Gujarat, there are several firsts, especially from entrepreneurship point of view. And entrepreneurship, several new entrepreneurship is like a startup. And government of Gujarat, in fact, was ahead of government of India, because the present PM was the then CM, and he had a lot of focus on technology, startup, all these things. So we announced our support right in 2015. So if we look at a startup ecosystem in India, you know, there are more than 50% startups are from tier 2 and tier 3 cities, which is very heartening. So our expansion is very heartening. 47% of DPIIT startups have women director. We were just discussing this. The previous panel was discussing this. Now, there are on an average 10 jobs per startup. So it is also employment generator and higher level of employment generator. There are total number of 122,000 startup registered with DPIIT. and we have more than 110 unicorns, out of which 30% belong to fintech space. India is, as you all are aware, third largest startup ecosystem. So, so far as Gujarat is concerned, in the criteria, I mean, in the framework of DPIT, Gujarat was announced best performer so far as state startup ranking was concerned consecutively from 2018. Also received Prime Minister's Award for Excellence. There are 391 startup funded under Gujarat Industrial Policy, and there are about 12,900, more than that, DPIIT recognized startups in Gujarat. Government has also extended support like procurement exemption from startup. We don't have to do that tender procedure and all, and to a certain limit, we can buy or we can procure directly from startup. There is also a Gujarat Young Entrepreneurs Venture Fund provided by GVFL, and government of Gujarat also allows a direct work allocation. So if we again look at the network of incubation centers across the state, we have a healthy network. So these are some of the strength from government side. So we have IeCreate, we have an International Automotive Center of Excellence, then we have iHub. IeCreate mainly is from industry side. iHub is, mainly looks at students. And from science and technology, we have just set up Artificial Intelligence Center of Excellence. We are the first state in the country to do so. And we from science and technology focus very much on deep tech. Thank you. We have also announced a modified IT-ITS policy, and that has given several incentives for startups. So the first one is assistance in research and development, prototype creation, product development. This is required in the initial stage, and that is what we are also providing for. We also provide patent assistance, assistance for quality certification, facilitating shared infrastructure, and special incentives. In addition to that, we also support ICT and deep tech incubators. We provide them both CapEx and OpEx support. We also support ICT and deep tech accelerators. And in our previous policy, we supported about 7 incubators. Now, the previous panel also discussed about deep tech startups. Deep tech startups are very, very important. They, enrich the entire startup ecosystem. Deep tech startup provides that technology leverage to other startups. So they are very, very important. And from science and technology, we focus more on deep tech startup. So generally about 20%, it is desirable that 20% are deep tech startup. And the more the merrier, it's better, because it improves the overall ecosystem of startup. I would like to mention some of the interesting examples of the Center of Excellence that we had set up in partnership with METI to promote Industry 4.0 program in Gujarat. So this was set up in Gandhinagar, and our department, Ministry of IT, and NASCOM, they were jointly, they were running this center. And we had some excellent results. What we have been doing, we have been working with MSMEs. We were getting problem statements from them, and even some of the large industries. The startups, challenge was thrown to startups to provide solution to them. And they did such a wonderful job. They not only made MSMEs efficient, but they also increased their technology adoption. And there were some commonly implemented solutions like cyber security, some solution related to HR management, even the value chain management, supply chain management. So if we look at some of the figures, through that Center of Excellence, we connected about 1,175 industry. More than 75 plants were incorporated. More than 90 startups were incubated. There were more than 45 manufacturing partners, more than 65 use cases initiated. And it's very important that they are not dependent only on government support. It's very important that support also comes from private sector. Why that is important? To make them more and more market oriented, to make them remain focused, and also to have that connect with industry and real life solution. So it was very heartening that more than 145 crore was raised from private sector. And now we have the Center of Excellence for Artificial Intelligence that again we have set up in collaboration with NASCOM, Microsoft, IBM, and here also MATE is going to be a very important partner. So this is for democratizing artificial intelligence. And here again, we are not restricting only to rolling out to government departments, but also to provide solution for the industry. And venture capital, angel investors, linkages, government incentives, all these are going to be a very important component and very important foundation for this Center of Excellence. Market access, regulatory facilitation, these are some of the very important things that startup would require during their not only proof of concept, but also commercial rollout. Skilling is so very important. Industry-ready skilling or finishing school approach is something that we require. And I think all the academic institutions, STEM institutions, they must reorient themselves to incorporate this finishing school approach for skilling, even for academic purpose. So, this is our action plan in brief, like how we would be. This is the minimum aim that we have for our Center of Excellence. And this again, our modality is the same. And what, you must have seen that there are number of different modalities under which a startup functions. Startup may identify itself some challenge, work on some solution as per their understanding, or maybe with support of incubator, accelerator, they may improvise. And then they pitch to the funding agencies and they get funding. That is one methodology. The other mode could be, they get a problem statement, we throw a challenge to startup. Startup, we from the very beginning, we connect them to the organization or the company or MSME who faces this challenge, and startup works in coordination with them, and they'll come out with the solution. They will be closely engaged, and they will roll out the solution for them. So, in some ways, the second one is a more efficient way of engaging startup. So from the very beginning, they have that required data sets with them. They know exactly the challenge. They're working with the industry who will mentor them. The skilling requirement will also be fulfilled, and it's time efficient as well. So this is how we are working in our Center of Excellence. And we have begun with this 6 challenges from government side and 4 challenges from industry side. And we have just announced it on 27th of January. And you can see the kind of progress, the fast progress that they are making. They're already identified through challenge. Their solution has been showcased, and they already have sessions, and some of them already have sessions with the use case owner. It is hardly, a little about 2 weeks, and they've made such a progress. So, this is just to show that this methodology can be very efficient. So again, I mean, these are some of the areas or problem statements that we have received from government departments and also from the industry side. So one of the industry, they wanted AI-led surgical planning. The other one wanted digitization of legacy medical documents. So these are the kind of problem statement that we are receiving, and some of them can be further customized for all the industries. Now, Government of India has in fact initiated a movement of software technology parks in India, which is STPI. And in Gujarat, we have two such STPIs, one in Surat and the other one is in Gandhinagar. And as per them, in tier 2 cities, in fact, Gujarat leads so far as export of IT-based solutions are concerned. It's more than 8,000 crore in the last financial year. Let me also make a mention of sector-specific startup. Since deep tech is very important, we have sector-specific startup. In IT, our IT policy, we have a focus on deep tech startup. Here for biotechnology, we have a focus on Savli Technology and Business Incubator. So this incubator has been functioning in hub and spoke model. We have a dedicated biotechnology park at Savli, Baroda, and they are functioning there directly in contact with industry. Since they are in hub and spoke model, one of the spoke is in Gandhinagar as well. We have a dedicated Gujarat Biotechnology University and also Biotechnology Research Center, and they closely work with that. We also have a mission with that not only provides assistance for commercial rollout, but also focuses on research and development. Again, biotechnology is a disruptive sector. Some of us might not be aware, but it's actually a very disruptive sector. So STBI offers a ready-to-use labs. Now, these are very important, especially for deep tech, to offer them lab and that kind of platform on which they can build a solution. We should offer them that kind of robust platform. And STBI, by the way, has been featuring as among the top 5 public bio incubators in the country. They have so far identified more than 115 startups, and they have been, 50% of them have also received funding. And there are specialized scientific infrastructure like clean room, cell culture facility, 3D bioprinting, etc. We are again planning to provide a common facility center at Savli Biotech. Now, these are some of the important numbers that you may like to see. So far, 115 incubators have been touched. There have been more than 55 startups supported by STBI with ideation and seed funds. About 26 startups have exercised or raised external funds of about rupees 32 crore. More than 30 startups have entered into market with more than 140 products. Total valuation of the successful startups incubated by STBI is rupees 450 crore. And total revenue generated by them is rupees 34 crore. Employment generated by them are more than 400, and more than 65 of them have IP. So this is what I wanted to mention about sector specific. It becomes very important to focus on sector also. Now, one of such sector can be space tech, it can be dev tech. We have semiconductor and high-end electronics hub coming up in Gujarat. So that is another area. Now, these are very, very important areas where we specifically need to support startup. They will require special attention and special kind of arrangement or, lab kind of design tools, which it's not possible that general incubators will have. And that's why sector specific, especially high-tech sector specific startups are our priority and our focus. So with this much details, I would like to end my presentation. And if there are any questions, I'll be happy to take. So I guess there is no question. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for those enlightening words. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let's move forward to our next panel discussion of the day, which is on the topic From Seed to Scale, the crucial role of financing in startups. And I would like to invite Mr. Hitesh Vyas, Assistant Editor of the Indian Express, who will be moderating this session. Can we have a huge round of applause for him? And now may I invite our panelists. Firstly, please welcome with a huge round of applause, Mr. Mihir Joshi, Chief Executive Officer, GVFL Limited. And now please welcome Mr. Jiten Thakkar, Head Swarnim IP Cell, Swarnim Startup Incubation Center. Please welcome Mr. Parthiv Patel, CEO, Founder and CEO, Pet Puja. And now please welcome Supriya Sharma, Partner, IMMA Ventures. Thank you so much, everyone. And now over to you, Hitesh.
Hello. Good evening, all the people on the dais, off the dais. After listening to insightful views on how Gujarat is playing a crucial role in nurturing startups, we move on to another topic, another crucial aspect of startup ecosystem, which is financing. As you all are aware, for a startup, initially they are not able to make profit, and financing is something which helped them bridge this gap. Currently India has the third largest startup ecosystem with over 100 unicorns. And this has been possible because of government support and the liquidity which has flown into the startup ecosystem. To discuss further on this, we have Mr. Mihir Joshi and Mr. Jatin Thakkar, Parthiv, and Dr. Supriya Sharma. Okay, so I'll begin with, sorry, yeah. So I'll begin asking a question to Dr. Mihir, Mr. Mihir, Dr. Supriya, and Mr. Jatin. So you have been, your role as an incubator accelerator, you have been dealing with multiple startups. When you meet these startups, what is the key area you look at or you evaluate when you support these startups, especially in terms of funding?
So GVFL, the institution is Gujarat Venture Finance Limited. So we are venture capital firm. So basically, being a venture capital firm, the point is it's a business wherein you are helping scaling up the company with the right capital, and it is more of a partnership approach. So unlike so GVFL exists for last 35 years. First 20 years hardly there was anything in a startup ecosystem. Hence, while putting capital, it was always a struggle to find out the startup on one part, and once invested in some of the startup, there will always be a challenge to find the next round of investors, because no many venture funds were around if you look at 10 years back. Now good part is many incubators are around, accelerators are there, angel investors are there, and the VC fund like us. So the point is, good part is an accelerator and incubator create the infrastructure, put up the shape to the startup, and make a product market fit, and to a level wherein angel investors and other people have put in. And that's where the serious business starts from for a startup and a venture capital fund like us. So a venture capital fund, whether it's a GVFL or any fund in the market, and good part in India, there are now many. So it is more of a partnership wherein a venture capital fund will put in maybe from 5 crores to 50 crores to nowadays even a few hundred crores as well in a startup for certain percentage equity stake in the company. So idea is if a startup scale well, then the founder will make money, the fund provider will make money. If it does not work well, then there is a risk involved.
Dr. Supriya, if you can share your thoughts.
Hi, I hope I'm audible. Can I answer your question in maybe 3 layers? As IMA Ventures, we essentially look at filling some of the biggest gaps that an early stage startup would face. Namely, do I know what do I want to do? What is the sector, which is a knowledge gap? How do I build this product, or how do I take it? How do I price this product, which is a training gap, a teaching gap? I have a question, who do I go out and ask this question, which is a coaching or a mentoring gap? I need capital. We spoke about, the previous panel spoke about the capital. So I need capital, which is a capital gap or the money gap. And then, hey, I have a product, I have some early customers, I'm ready to scale. How do I sort of get on that hockey stick, which is a scaling gap or an acceleration gap? As IMA Ventures, we really spread across this sort of continuum or this suite of what an early stage startup would typically need. So that's the first layer as to what is the spectrum of our work. The second layer is the themes that we operate in. And there are 3 themes that we primarily operate in, if not entirely. Deep tech, there was some conversation on deep tech, climate tech, and inclusive tech. All of these 3 are hard themes to build for and sort of to catalyze in India, but that's what we do. So that's the second layer of what we do. And then the final layer, which is will bring it all together to answer your question as to what is it that we look for in funding a startup or in supporting a startup. If I can be an absolute reductionist and bring it down to the lowest common factors, maybe 2 big things matter. One is how deeply aware is the founder about where are they operating or what are they building in. How realistic is that understanding? Because a lot of times, I'm sure all of us here come across founders who believe they understand the space that they're operating in, but not really. Their understanding could be very removed from how the reality is, how value chains work. So one, we look for a very, very thorough understanding, a realistic understanding of what is the space that they're operating in. And 2, equally importantly, can the founder build or see it through? It is not just an idea. The proof really is in being able to build something and scale it. So is there some proof of the founder being able to deliver on what exists in their minds? So these 3 layers.
So Jatin.
So particularly many of the things has been explained, but I would like to address in a different way that for the funding, in particularly in the Gujarat, so ecosystem has been prepared with many of the policies. So at the level of the ideation, at the institutes levels, what currently the policy is for the student startup and innovation policy. So they means all the grantee institutes, what they're doing, supporting the ideation level up to 2.5 lakhs rupees. So at that time, they are not observing that, yeah, this idea will going to, sustain or not, but let's give support. And particularly what we have, learned from our stakeholders in the startup ecosystem, जो बच्चा आ रहा है उसके आइडिया को, उसके स्टार्टअप की इंथुसियाज्म को ना करके मार मत डालो, माने उसकी भ्रूण हत्या मत करो. So the Gujarat startup ecosystem, supporting with the ideation level. Then Srujan is there with the 10 lakh supports. IC departments, the Startup Gujarat is there. They are supporting up to 30 lakhs rupees. Startup India is supporting up to 20 lakhs grants rupees. And for the bigger, JVFL is there.
Let's listen from startup founder, Mr. Parthiv. Parthiv, you have been raising money and you continue to raise money. So what are the challenges you face in raising funds?
Very apt question, actually. See, the point is, if you actually look at it at the level of ideation to Series A, right? Typically, this is where I think Gujarat, we do have ecosystem in place, right? To an extent. I would still say, even from Series A perspective, if you actually remove GVFL, right? There is genuinely no major fund available who can actually, competitively fund at least new age entrepreneurs, right? That's actually the challenge here. And from Series A to Series C or D or whatever, right? There is genuinely nobody available. So from a founder perspective, you have to actually keep going out, keep meeting, keep going to different cities where those venture capital funds are placed. You have to keep meeting them again and again. So there is this, I would actually say there is this intimacy which is generally lost because of the region or cities, where they are not present, right? That is one challenge you would actually face. And this is one of the reason I would say, apart from a perspective of why ecosystem in Gujarat ideally should be on par with probably Bangalore and other places. You see the talent, tech talent, you see, other, the business acumen, actually all of those things or ingredients are there. It is only this one particular piece, right, which is the funding ecosystem. If it comes in, if it falls in place, I think you would actually see much better results than probably Bangalore or Pune or some other city. That is what my take is.
Mr. Mihir, can you share how can this problem can be addressed?
So there are two things. One is the perception that anybody is in Bangalore is expected to do better is a wrong perception. Probably many of the investors carry with themselves, and many times a founder also get carried away. The problem, like for example, Parthiv has been here, very large team. He refused to go to Bangalore, which generally other startup do, and he said, okay, I will do and create a business out of here only. The point is, if there are the investors sitting in Bangalore, if they think that this sector is very large, he is into restaurant tech solutions, so they ended up investing in some of his competitor company. Fast forward in last 7-8 years, Parthiv's company, Paid Puja, owns 70% of the market share, and the competitor who would have raised maybe 10 times of the funding which Parthiv raised, probably now nowhere. So the question is that the funding hardly not necessarily differentiate. The point is, and I have seen and spoken to many of the companies. We invested in the largest AC embedded chip designing company, sold to the USA company, the largest manpower here, and always we refuse to switch to a Bangalore only because in Bangalore it is expensive manpower. There is higher attrition than in Ahmedabad. Here the local talent is available. They stay along, and the ability to attract money is just a function of what you do. Nowadays, everything is connected. Every VC try to keep an eye, because at the end of the day, every VC wants to make money, and will be reaching out to where the startup is. Gone are the days wherein the founders need to go and travel to the VCs shops. It is other way around, that the VCs are aggressively coming to the startup. And let me tell you some of the statistics. In last 2 years, earlier it used to be the case wherein we were sitting in office and attending the startup. Now last 3 years, because now there are many first-time fund managers in the market, we are seeing heavy competition. In an investment business, generally investment business from outside, it appears to be very lucrative, that you are sitting with money, so naturally the people will come to you. But imagine a scenario that you wanted to invest in the best startup, right? Out of 100 proposals, you will select maybe 5 of them. All 5 of them, you will say, okay, I am investing in you, okay? By the time you are writing check, because always there will be a 2 months or 3 months process involved. By the time you are writing a check, out of 5, 3 will disappear because some other funds would have given the better terms. So that kind of competition do exist for the right kind of startup. And hence, I don't see that could be a scenario. But of course, these are the perception which people carry. It depends on the category of the startup you are in, the technology, product, requirement, talent, and all those stuff.
Parthiv, as a founder who has built a very successful startup, if you can give two advice to emerging startups, what should they do in terms of when they are pitching for an investment? What are key highlights they should focus on?
So pitching for an investment vis-a-vis actually success is two different things, right? But let's say from pitching from an investment point of view, see, from an investor point of view, actually they would want to see obviously the problem we want to look solving, right? That needs to be, there needs to be a very large market for that problem, right? That's a first and foremost thing, right? Typically, and in India, you would actually find this way that people generally don't invest into low TAM or no, if there is no category available right now, kind of solutions, right? This should change probably in future, but at least at this stage we have seen, at least I have seen personally, that if the market is ready, there is a large market available, that's a first good point actually to start with. That's first. Second thing, which is going to be most critical one, which is from a competition point perspective, how differentiated are you, right? If these two pieces are there in your deck and pitches, I think then the problem is solved. Most of the discussions are going to revolve around this thing, right? And this is where I think the most of the founders actually would face a challenges, right? One, probably because if we are targeting, let's say, Indian market or in the Indian SMB market, there is a challenge where market probably is not large, right? So you'll have to actually keep proving that every time that there is large market kind of stuff, and there is no empirical data set available easily, right? So that's kind of one challenge you would face. And the second one, which is also to an extent, because we are not a developed economy, there are so many even in larger market, right? You have so many fragmented, competition available that it is still not easy to, tell your prospective investors that you are the most differentiated one, right? So these are the two major challenges. I think if these two are addressed correctly, should fall in place.
See, I just want to move on to another topic. Last year in 2024, Indian startup raised around $12 billion, which was 20% more than 2023. But it is lower than what we have seen post-COVID, where Indian startups had raised 42 billion. So do you see that funding winter is still on? Has the risk appetite of investors declined? What are the concerns? Is valuation continue to remain a concern?
I could maybe present 2 or 3 different ways to unpack your question. One, of course, there are, global macroeconomic changes, and we don't, as a country or as an ecosystem, we don't operate, in a cocoon. So there will be effect of sort of changes, both political as well as economic changes that are happening across many economies. Some of that because funds also raise capital from outside India. And hence, those pathways are pretty obvious that whatever is happening in the global market will get reflected in the capital that is flowing into companies. That's one aspect. The other is the numbers that you're saying, Hitesh, if you were to open it up a little more, I suppose we're seeing more early stage capital going into companies now, than the post-COVID time that you're talking about. Okay. So many venture capital funds, and I also want to hear other thoughts, but so many venture capital funds who were investing in Series B, C onwards, they're scaling up the value chain. They're setting up accelerator programs. They're trying to get in early when valuations are more affordable, when they can take a bigger punt in the companies, right? So it is, I think there's more nuance than what meets the eye at first glance, and I think we should consider that.
Mr. Jatin, what are your thoughts?
So adding to all of these things, I have observed that many of the opportunities opened because of the government's some hackathons and those things. So opportunity for the innovation because of the center of the excellence are there. So opportunity of the innovations were there. And with that, many of the IPs are filed. Now, the investors are also observing that the startups are with the good innovation, solving the good problems. And startups are not only doing the problem statement solving, but also their vision is up to the SME IPOs. So what is this that if they are going to invest, they have a good exit strategy, and once they will get the benefits.
So let me give you the insight of 2021 number, which were highest in the history, around 42 billion, and then coming back to the normalcy, which is $22 billion. So 2021 post-COVID, USA-based investor who are investing in India and Asia market and globally, those funds have raised too much money in 2021. They need to deploy somewhere. Normally, the deployment by this US-based fund, which are global funds, 2/3 of, if they target Asia market, 2/3 of the money goes to the China, and maybe a 20%, 25% money come to the India. But in 2021, most of the global fund manager decided not to invest in China because of the COVID and other stuff. Then naturally, those money need to come somewhere, right? And hence, the Indian startup were beneficiary. And let me tell you, some of the startup which we were evaluating for maybe a 10 or 20 crore stake, fast forward in 6 months would have raised maybe close to $100 million, $150 million. While you congratulate that founder, कि भैया तुम्हारे तो बहुत अच्छा पैसा आ गया, congratulations, तो वो भी बोलेगा सर, I was to raise hardly maybe 20 crores, now I am loaded with maybe 500 crores, what do I do? So the point is, you consume too much money, it causes a diarrhea, right? And then you are not in a position to perform, catch up, or may not necessarily you can raise the next round, because now if you raised 500 crores, next target is 1,000 crore fundraise, which not necessarily will happen with old startup. So the point is, those startup will falter somewhere because those kind of valuation and other things are not sustainable. Execution is always challenge. When you consume too much money, the performance is, or the growth is a function of spending money, which are not necessarily sustainable. In India, there is hardly any consumer loyalty, so you can't really buy the growth. Some of the companies who can't sustain in the growth momentum, there is more money if they could, but some of them only could do. They end up acquiring other companies. Okay, I am not growing, let me acquire other companies, bulk it up. So in the race, the fortunate were like Byju's, Unacademy, some of the B2C player. They were fortunate because they could raise more and more money, ended up faltering somewhere. So you can't buy growth, you can't buy companies and sustain growth. Both are a faulty strategy. Otherwise, if you look at $20 billion, it used to be pre-COVID. The similar or maybe little higher amount, Indian startup are raising, which I think is a normal and will keep on growing maybe a 10-20% year on year.
But we have to wrap it up because CM is going to come. Just quick comments on how do you see future of startup investing?
Looking good. If it was just 2 words, looking good. But also we're sitting in Ahmedabad, we're sitting in the epicenter of say the space regulator is set up here. There's massive investments happening in semiconductors, so we're going to see some deep tech, manufacturing-led work being done here. Gift is just in our backyard. Consumer companies, like Pet Puja are being founded here. So, I mean, not consumer, but really tech companies that are building for the Indian reality are being sort of founded here. So, looking good.
I think you would see actually more tougher problems getting solved compared to what we did in last decade. Not more of those delivery and e-com related just problems, but you would actually see let's say more of deep tech, more of manufacturing led stuff. All of those things actually anyway those things were required, but I think now as we grow, right, you would actually see money getting into space tech, deep tech, even I would actually say mobility related startup, which is like flying cars and stuff like that. So I think that is a very good sign, very good sign for a nation.
I think sir has yes,
thank you so much panelists for your thought-provoking views. Thank you audience.
So thank you so much everyone for such intense discussion. And as I said earlier, we are privileged to have Shri Bhupendrabhai Patel as our esteemed chief guest for the day, and he'll be anytime here very soon. So everyone, please be ready to welcome him with a huge round of applause. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our Honorable Chief Minister, Shri Bhupendrabhai Patel as our chief guest for the day. Can we have a huge round of applause for him? It's an honor to have you, sir, here with us today. And now I'll request Leena Mishra to present sir with a bouquet and to officially welcome him on behalf of the Indian Express. एक बार फिर से जोरदार तालियां हो जाए. Over to you, ma'am.
Good evening. I extend a warm welcome to Mananiya Mukhyamantri Shri Bhupendrabhai Patel Sahib. We are really very happy to have you here. દિવસમાં અમે લોકોએ બે પેનલ ડિસ્કશન કર્યા છે સાહેબ ઓન સ્ટાર્ટઅપ્સ ઇન ગુજરાત એન્ડ ધ વે ફોરવર્ડ અને એને કેવી રીતે આપણે ફાઇનાન્સ કરી શકશું ફાઇનાન્સિંગમાં શું શું ઇશ્યુઝ છે ને બધું અને આ એનરિચિંગ ડિસ્કશન પછી હવે we are really eager to hear from you how Gujarat has been an enabler એટલે પ્રોત્સાહિત કેવી રીતે કર્યું છે સ્ટાર્ટઅપ્સને અને હંમેશા 4 વર્ષોથી ગુજરાત આગળ જ રહ્યું છે રેન્કિંગ્સમાં બીજા રાજ્યો કરતા અને આગળ આપણા શું પડકારો છે અને એના માટે ગુજરાત સરકાર કેવી રીતે તૈયારીઓ કરી રહી છે સાહેબ હવે પ્લીઝ પધારો
ધ ઇન્ડિયન એક્સપ્રેસ ગ્રુપ દ્વારા આયોજિત સ્ટાર્ટઅપ ગુજરાત કાર્યક્રમમાં આપણી સૌની સાથે ઉપસ્થિત રેસિડેન્ટ એડિટર શ્રી લીના મિશ્રા, ચીફ ઓફ બ્યુરો શ્રી પરિમલ ડાભી, સિનિયર જનરલ મેનેજર શ્રી હરેશ પગદેવ, મંચની સામે મારા સાથી ધારાસભ્ય શ્રી દિનેશસિંહ કુશવા, ઉપસ્થિત સૌ સ્ટાર્ટઅપ સાથે જોડાયેલા યુવા સાહસિકો, સૌને મારા નમસ્કાર. સ્ટાર્ટઅપ, મેક ઇન ઇન્ડિયા, ડિજિટલ ઇન્ડિયા, ફિટ ઇન્ડિયા, આમ જ્યારે શરૂઆત થઈ હોય ત્યારે આપણને એવું લાગે કે આ બધું શું છે. મેક ઇન ઇન્ડિયા, આપણને શરૂઆત સ્ટાર્ટઅપ અને સ્ટાર્ટઅપ માટેની શરૂઆત પહેલા સ્ટાર્ટઅપ શબ્દ અને સ્ટાર્ટઅપ એટલે શું, કેવી રીતે કરવાનું, કેવી રીતે આગળ વધવાનું કોઈના મગજમાં નહીં. કેટલા એવા યુવાનો હશે કે જેને સ્ટાર્ટઅપ પોતાની અંદર કંઈક કરી બતાવવું હોય, કરી શકવાની તાકાત વાળો હોય, પણ કેવી રીતે મૂકવું કે ભાઈ હું જે કરી રહ્યો છું, હું જે વિચારી રહ્યો છું એ સક્સેસફુલી પહેલા સ્ટાર્ટઅપમાં પોતાને વિશ્વાસ પડે એના માટે શરૂઆત ક્યાં કરવી, એના માટે જગ્યા કઈ, આ બધા પ્રશ્નોનું હલ એ માન્ય વડાપ્રધાનશ્રીના આયા પછી આપણને મળતું થઈ ગયું પૂરેપૂરું. કોઈને પણ અત્યારે વિચાર આવે કે ભાઈ મારું પાસે વિચાર છે અને એ વિચાર હું જમીન સુધી ઉતારી શકું એમ છું, તો એના માટેની જગ્યા વર્કસ્પેસથી માંડીને અને ફાઇનાન્સથી માંડીને બધું જ સરકાર આપે છે. અને સરકાર શરૂઆત કરી આપે પછી ઘણા એવા અહીંયા બેઠેલા યુવાનો છે તો એ લોકો પોતાનો બિઝનેસ, જેને કહેવાય કે નોકરીની ત્યાં ક્યાંક તકલીફ પડે એવી હોય, પણ એ નોકરીની જગ્યાએ પોતાનો બિઝનેસ શરૂ કરે અને એ પોતાનો બિઝનેસ કરીને નોકરીઓ આપવા વાળો બની જાય. આ તાકાત સ્ટાર્ટઅપમાં છે. એટલે ખૂબ સારી રીતે દરેકે દરેક તમે જુઓ તો દરેકે દરેક સેક્ટર, સરકારનું પૂરેપૂરું ધ્યાન માન્ય વડાપ્રધાનશ્રીએ કોઈ સેક્ટર એવું નથી છોડ્યું કે જેમાં આપણું ધ્યાન ન હોય. નવા નવા સેક્ટર જ્યાં આગળ અત્યારે આગળ વધી રહ્યો છે દેશ અને દુનિયા જેમાં આગળ વધી રહી છે કે ચિપ્સ હોય તો ચિપ્સ માટે પણ સેમિકન્ડક્ટરની વાત, તો સેમિકન્ડક્ટર માટે આપણા દેશમાં એવું કહેવાય છે કે આપણા દેશના દરેક વડાપ્રધાનશ્રીએ આ બિઝનેસ અહીંયા આગળ ભારત લાવવા માટે બધા જ વડાપ્રધાનોએ પ્રયત્ન કર્યા અને સક્સેસ ફક્ત અને ફક્ત વડાપ્રધાન શ્રી નરેન્દ્રભાઈને મળ્યા. ના આજે 3 સેમિકન્ડક્ટરની શરૂઆત અને આપણા માટે ફાયદો ક્યાં છે તો સેમિકન્ડક્ટરની શરૂઆત જે છે એ ગુજરાતથી થઈ રહી છે. એટલે દરેકે દરેક ક્ષેત્ર અને દરેક ક્ષેત્રમાં આગળ વધવું અને એ એક વિઝન સાથે, વિઝનરી લીડર પણ કહેવાય છે કે આજનું તો વિચારવાનું જ, પણ આવતીકાલ આપણી શું હોઈ શકે, આવતીકાલ આપણને શું શું મુશ્કેલી પડવાની છે એનો વિચાર પણ આજથી કરવાનો. તો એ પણ માનનીય વડાપ્રધાનશ્રીના નેતૃત્વમાં આપણે ગુજરાત સરકાર પણ કરી રહ્યું છે. સ્ટાર્ટઅપમાં ક્યાંક હમણાં તમે પેનલ ડિસ્કશન કર્યા હશે બધાએ, તો ક્યાંક સરકાર માટે યુવાનોને પડતી કોઈ મુશ્કેલી આવી હોય, એક મને એવું કહેતા હતા કે ભાઈ રજીસ્ટ્રેશન કરાવતી વખતે રજીસ્ટ્રેશન ફી આપે સરકાર, એવું કંઈક મારી પાસે એક વખત ફરિયાદ આવી હતી, બાકી તો બીજી અત્યારે પેનલ ડિસ્કશનમાં તમારી પાસે આવી હોય તો મને ખબર નથી, પણ કંઈક પણ આવી હોય તો અમારી એક તૈયારી હોય છે. સરકાર તરીકે અમારી એટલી બધી પોઝિટિવ, મારી તો પોતાની વાત છે કે ભાઈ તમને પડતી મુશ્કેલી અમે કેટલી ઝડપથી દૂર કરી શકીએ એના માટેનો અમારો પ્રયત્ન હોય. ખાલી તમારે તમને પડતી મુશ્કેલી અમારા સુધી પહોંચાડો એ અગત્યનું છે. એ ક્યારે પહોંચાડી શકો એ તમારે જોવાનું, કે જેટલી ઝડપથી તમારી પડતી મુશ્કેલી અમારા સુધી પહોંચે તો અમે એની પર કામ કરવા હંમેશા તૈયાર હોય છે. સ્ટાર્ટઅપમાં ઘણા બધા બહેનો પણ સ્ટાર્ટઅપમાં અત્યારે ખૂબ આગળ આવેલી છે. મેં હમણાં એક વખત અહીંયા આગળ સ્ટાર્ટઅપમાં હું ગયો હતો, તો આ કેળના ઝાડ હોય, કેળના ઝાડ, હવે એ કાપવાની ને કાપવામાં, કેળા તો બરોબર છે, કેળાની ઉપજ તો થઈ જાય, એની તો કિંમત આવી જાય, પણ એ કાપ્યા પછી એ ઝાડ ઉચકીને બહાર નાખવાની કિંમત પેલા લોકોને બહુ ખર્ચવી પડતી હતી. તો આ લોકોએ સ્ટાર્ટઅપ એવું શોધી નાખ્યું કે એની અંદરથી આખી સાડી બનાવે છે. એટલે ખૂબ સારી એમ કહેવાય કે સ્ટાર્ટઅપની તાકાતની વાત હું કરી રહ્યો છું કે કેટલી મોટી તાકાત છે. અને અત્યારે આપણે બધાએ એનીમાં કે ભાઈ વેસ્ટ ટુ એનર્જી, કે વેસ્ટમાંથી કેવી રીતે એનર્જી ઊભી કરવી, એના માટે બી આપણે પ્રયત્ન કરતા હોઈએ છીએ. આ દરેકે દરેક વસ્તુમાં આ વસ્તુ આપણને, સ્ટાર્ટઅપ એ એવી વસ્તુ છે કે જ્યાં સોલ્યુશન ઘણી બધી વસ્તુઓના આપણને મળવા મુશ્કેલ હોય, એમાંથી આ સ્ટાર્ટઅપ આપણને સોલ્યુશન શોધી આપતા હોય. તો એ યુવાનોની તાકાત હોય છે. મારી પાસે તો ઘણા બધા વિદ્યાર્થીઓ આવ્યા છે, અને અત્યારે ગુજરાતમાં એક મોટો ફાયદો એ છે કે છોકરાઓ, સ્ટુડન્ટ જે ભણે છે એ લોકો માટેની તો છે જ વ્યવસ્થા, પણ કોઈ ભણવા નથી જતું અને ઘેર બેઠા કંઈક શોધ્યું છે તો એના માટેની પણ ગુજરાત સરકારે વ્યવસ્થા કરી છે કે એને પણ ફાઇનાન્સ મળે ને એનું સ્ટાર્ટઅપ આગળ વધી શકે, એના માટેની વ્યવસ્થા ગુજરાત સરકારે કરી છે. એટલે જે પ્રમાણે દેશ જે પ્રમાણે આગળ વધી રહ્યો છે, અહીંયા આગળ બેઠેલા દરેક જણ જોઈ રહ્યા છે કે ભાઈ આજે આર્થિક સત્તાની વાત આપણે અહીંયા બેઠેલા બધાના મગજમાં એક વખત તો આમ જેને કહેવાય કે આપણે બધા હલી ગયા હતા કે આ દેશનું થશે શું, આ દેશમાં અર્થતંત્રનું શું થશે, કેવી રીતે આગળ વધશે. હવે અત્યારે હું આ છેલ્લા લોકસભામાં જ્યારે ઇલેક્શન કેમ્પેનમાં ગયા તો આપણે કહીએ ને કે ભાઈ આપણે માનનીય વડાપ્રધાન શ્રી ત્રીજી વખત બેસશે ને આપણું અર્થતંત્ર ક્યાં જશે, તો કદાચ સામે વિસ્તાર એવો પણ હોય કે જ્યાં ભણતર ઓછું હોય, અર્થતંત્રની ખબર ના હોય, તોય સામેથી જવાબ આવે કે ભાઈ આ માનનીય વડાપ્રધાન ત્રીજી વખત વડાપ્રધાન બનશે ને આપણું અર્થતંત્ર ત્રીજા નંબર ઉપર આવશે. એટલે એ વિશ્વાસ સાથે આજે દેશ આગળ વધી રહ્યો છે કે ભાઈ, બાકી આમ જેને આપણા દેશ માટે આપણે પોતે બધાને એમ થઈ ગયું હતું કે આપણો દેશ કેવી રીતે આગળ વધે. એમાંથી આજે માન્ય એક વ્યક્તિ અને એક વ્યક્તિની કેટલું વધારી શકે ને એક વ્યક્તિથી બગાડવી શરૂ થતો હોય છે. એક વ્યક્તિથી સુધાર થઈ શકે અને કેટલો સુધાર થઈ શકે, અને એક વ્યક્તિથી બગાડ પણ થઈ શકતો હોય છે. અને એ તાકાત આપણે બધાએ જોઈ છે. તો આજે તો સ્ટાર્ટઅપ અને સ્ટાર્ટઅપ માટેનું ખૂબ સારું આયોજન છે. મીડિયા તરીકે પોઝિટિવ કે ભાઈ આજે, નહીતર મીડિયામાં તો અમારા માટે અમે તો કહીએ છીએ કે ભાઈ મીડિયાની કોઈ વસ્તુ નેગેટિવ ગમે તેટલું હોય તો મેં એને પોઝિટિવ લીધું છે કે ભાઈ જે આવ્યું છે એ આવ્યું છે મીડિયામાં નેગેટિવ, એને જુઓ, ચેક કરો અને આપણે સુધાર કરવાનો તેમાંથી સુધાર કરો. પણ ઘણી વખતે આવી જતું હોય છે મીડિયા પાસે પણ એવું આવી જાય. એક ઉદાહરણ મારી પાસે એવું આવ્યું કે ન્યૂઝમાં આવે કે ભાઈ ગંદા પાણીમાં થઈ અને સ્મશાન યાત્રા નીકળે, અને એ પણ અમદાવાદની નજીક કડીમાં. હવે એ ન્યૂઝ આવી ગયા એટલે તો આપણને એમ લાગે કે શું ખરેખર, અને આ ન્યૂઝ આવ્યા પછી અહીંયા બેઠેલા તો બધાને એવું જ લાગે કે યાર શું સરકાર કરી રહી છે, કે આવું હતું હશે. કારણ કે આપણે રોજબરોજ જોતા હોઈએ, ડેવલપમેન્ટની વાતથી માંડીને બધું આપણા મગજમાં હોય, ત્યારે આવો કિસ્સો આવે આપણા મગજમાં તો આપણને દુઃખ થાય કે આવું તો કેવી રીતે ચલાવી લેવાય, કેવી રીતે આ લોકો શું ધ્યાન રાખે છે એમ. પણ ખરેખર જે આ બધા સ્ટાફને બધાને મારે બી મગજ તો એવું થાય કે ભાઈ આવું તો કેવી રીતે ચાલે. તો મેં વળી એ દાડે બધાને બોલાવી લીધા સ્ટાફને કે ભાઈ બોલાવો જો કોણ કોણ એની જવાબદાર. તો રસ્તો સ્મશાન જવાનો તો એ રસ્તો તો પાકો છે જ, પણ ખાલી નજીક પડે એટલા માટે થઈને ત્યાંથી લઈ ગયા હતા. 500 મીટર અને 1 કિલોમીટર બસ આટલો ફેર, વધારે બી નહીં. લાંબો ફેર હોય કે ભાઈ 10 કિલોમીટર હોય ને 1 કિલોમીટરમાં પતી જતું હોય તો બરોબર. એટલે ઘણી વખતે આવું બી થતું હોય, પણ હવે બધાના પેલું શું કહે, રિયલ ચેક તો બધા કેવી રીતે કરવા ને ક્યાંથી કરવા. પણ આપણે તૈયારી રાખવાની કે ભાઈ ન્યૂઝમાં કંઈ પણ આવે તો આપણે ચેક કરવું જોઈએ ને એના પર જે સુધાર થાય આપણે કરવાનો. એટલે પોઝિટિવ જિંદગી વધારે આનંદ આપતી હોય છે. નહીતર શું થાય, ગુસ્સો ચડચડ કરે તમને. સવારથી છાપું જોયું ને પછી નીકળવાનું, તો સવારે છાપું વાંચ્યા પછી જ બહાર નીકળવાનું હોય તો શું થાય. વિકસિત ગુજરાતની પણ અમે તો ખૂબ સારી તૈયારી કરી દીધી છે. આજે તો અત્યારે બીજું કંઈ તો છે નહીં ને, એટલે હું ફોર્મલ આ બધી વાતો અત્યારે કરી રહ્યો છું. ગુજરાતની તો વિકસિત ગુજરાત પણ ફાઇનાન્શિયલી આજે તમે કદાચ 2 દિવસ પહેલા છાપામાં જોયું હશે કે ભાઈ આપણે ગુજરાત જ એક એવું સ્ટેટ છે કે જે દેવું ઘટાડી રહ્યો છે. એટલે ઘણી વખતે અમે બોલતા હોઈએ કે ભાઈ આજે ગુજરાત અને ફાઇનાન્શિયલ મેનેજમેન્ટમાં આખા દેશમાં ગુજરાત નંબર 1 પોઝિશન ઉપર કોવિડ પછી પણ રહ્યો છે. એટલે આપણા બધા માટે ખૂબ સારી વાત છે કે ભાઈ એમાં કંઈ તકલીફ પડે એવી નથી. ફક્ત અમે ધ્યાન રાખી રહ્યા છીએ કે ભાઈ આપણે બધા ભેગા મળી અને ક્વોલિટી વર્ક ઉપર જઈએ અને ક્વોલિટી વર્ક ઉપર ધ્યાન રાખીએ છીએ તો હજુ દેવું એ ઘટશે અને આપણે જે જોઈએ છે સારી વસ્તુઓ પણ બધી મળતી રહેશે. અને જે માનનીય વડાપ્રધાનશ્રીનો જે સંકલ્પ છે વિકસિત ભારત માટે લીડ લેવાની હોય તો એ ગુજરાત જ લે અને ગુજરાત જ લઈને આગળ વધે. એના માટે આપ સૌનો સાથ અને સહકાર મળશે અને આપણે સૌ સાથે મળી અને વિકસિત ગુજરાતથી વિકસિત ભારત બનાવીએ એ જ અભ્યર્થના. ભારત માતા કી જય. વંદે માતરમ. જય જય ગરવી.
Thank you so much, sir, for your leadership and enriching thoughts. Can we have a huge round of applause for once again for him? And now I'll request all the partners to please join us on the stage for having a group picture with Shri Bhupendrabhai Patel ji. Thank you so much, Shri Bhupendrabhai Patel ji, for honoring us with your presence. And now, in the end, once again, I would like to thank our partners, our co-presenting partner, Index TV, our associate partner, iHub, Savli Technology, and Business Incubator, iCreate, Swarnim University, Parul University, GVFL, Charusat, and Anand Foundation. So once again, thank you so much for everyone for joining us for this event, and I'll request everyone to move forward for the dinner. Thank you so much. And can we end our day with a huge round of applause?
I create राज्य के और देश के जो इनोवेशन में इंटरेस्ट रखते हैं इनको इंक्यूबेशन प्रोवाइड करने का काम करते हैं। आप ऐसे इनोवेशन कीजिए जो भारत के जीवन में बदलाव लाने के लिए सरलता से व्यवस्थाओं को विकसित कर सके।
Okay, important announcement, dinner is at the pool side.